Welcome back, friends, to this week's episode of the Inspired Yogi. Today I am with Lara J. Day. Lara, welcome to the show. I'm excited to have you here.
Thank you. So happy to be here.
Happy to have you. I've read a little bit about you online and whatnot. You want to share with our audience a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, well, I guess I have a couple of offerings at this point in my life, and one of them is this Oracle deck and the practice of the 13 Sacred Nights, which is a winter solstice practice that's asking us to align with the rhythms of nature and the quiet and the darkness and the stillness when we're all out, shopping compulsively and overindulging in sugar and alcohol and jam-packing our calendars and flooding our lawns with LED light displays and just, like this slap in the face to the darkness. Like we will not be still, we will not be quiet, we will not go inward.
Yeah.
So that's one offering that I have at the moment that is really taking center stage. And then I also practice Neurogenic Qigong,
Okay.
which is my own mashup of two standalone modalities, one being traditional Qigong healing or medical Qigong, and the
Yeah.
other neurogenic tremor and trauma release work. So
Hmm.
so those are the two rabbit holes that I'm deep down into at the moment in my life.
Great. Let's go into the tarot cards first. Now well, you didn't say tarot, did you? I'm just used to tarot.
Yeah, so tarot
But-
is like a specific system of the greater umbrella that is oracle decks or oracle
Okay.
cards, right? Yeah.
Okay. Now you developed this Oracle deck?
So I did, yes, I
Okay.
created the oracle deck, and to be honest, I wasn't really like a tarot girly or an oracle deck girly before I created this oracle deck. I simply fell in love with this practice. I was introduced to it by my teacher the year my daughter was born. She's going to be 18 this year, which I can't believe. But yeah, so I've been doing this practice all those years, and I fell in love with it, and I would tell all my girlfriends about it, and want to share it with everyone and anyone. And then inevitably they started asking for more and more information, and it just sort of organically spilled into me creating this Oracle deck, which happens to be just a really great medium to teach this practice. So kind of the way that like I think of toast is like just a medium for butter, and the Oracle deck is really a delivery system for this winter solstice practice. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I know quite a bit of my audience dabbles in Oracle decks and or tarot and back and forth. So you want to explain a little bit about what they are for someone that has no idea?
Yeah. So an oracle deck is really it's a deck of cards that typically have very nice imagery on them, that is hopefully inspiring in one way, shape, or form, and then a message that goes along with each card. And so basically the idea is that this is a tool for you to receive guidance. And I like to think of it as that it can be a non-denominational practice where you're receiving guidance from whoever or however you name the mystery. So whether that's, your angels or source or spirit or God or Christ or, it's a tool for you to um, be in communication with some higher guidance. And so the idea is that you draw an oracle card and then you receive with a question in mind, right? A question on
Hmm.
your heart and an open ended question. So, never a yes or no question, but can you give me some insight into this relationship or into, my financial situation or, whatever it is that you're wanting some help with in your life. And then you would draw a card and then there would be a message that goes along with that card. And nowadays there's like, an oracle deck with every theme. So there's angel cards, there's fairy cards, there's like teenage mutant ninja turtle cards, like there's just like oracle decks of every kind.
Okay.
So yeah, and so then the oracle deck that I created is broken up into three categories of animals, herbs, and crystals.
Okay.
And again, it could be used like any oracle deck where you're just asking any question that's on your heart or mind, but it also teaches this winter solstice practice that is very specific and has a particular structure, and it's meant to be done during midwinter, the peak of winter, the winter solstice time. And essentially, what you're doing is creating a blueprint or a roadmap for the coming cycle of seasons or the new year. So you're drawing an oracle card for each coming month, and receiving that guidance, but then also planting your dream seeds in what I call the womb of winter or the fertile soil of the darkness, And so again, you're creating this magical blueprint for the coming cycle.
Okay, very cool. Now, my wife has a tarot deck, and I do use it, and I'm pretty fascinated with the messages being spot on for what I need. So it's
Yeah,
pretty crazy.
it's
So,
it's pretty amazing. I like to tell people that the magic is in you.
yeah.
It's not in the deck itself. Like the deck is just a tool that's inanimate,
Mm-hmm.
but if you have that ability to tune in and to listen and to get quiet and to center and to be guided by your intuition, you're going to be guided to some messages that are like laugh out loud, goosebump inducing, just it over and over and over again, right? Just like you're saying, you're just shocked by the accuracy of the
Yeah.
message you receive and how precisely it pertains to whatever you've got going on.
Yeah, for sure. Now, why 13 sacred nights?
Yeah, good question. So the number 13 was actually originally a representation of the divine goddess. 13 moon cycles in the year, therefore 13 female fertility cycles, right? And
Hmm.
enter the Catholic Church and all attempts to wipe out and demonize all things pertaining to the goddess. And you suddenly have the number 13 being superstitious, bad luck, associated with witchery, we have cities that have no 13th Avenue. We have cruise ships that have no 13th room. We have the Empire
Hospital
State
floors?
Building that has no 13th floor. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hospital floors. And so it really became this taboo that was embedded in our culture. But if you go back a little further in time, it was actually a very sacred number. So a practice like this, what I call the 13 sacred nights, would perhaps originally have been done with the 13 moon cycles of the year.
Okay.
And there are all kinds of similar practices, midwinter practices around the world, every culture, as far back as we can peek into human history. We've honored the solstice and the equinoxes and these sacred turning points in the year. And you've got, Stonehenge and Newgrange and Chaco Canyon and Nabta Playa, and just on every single continent, actually, we have ruins that were clearly built with care and precision to align with these
Hmm.
turning points in the year.
Yeah, even the Egyptian pyramids. Yes.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So there is no one straight lineage for this practice. It was inspired by all of these ancient practices that, came from cultures that were just living in cahoots with the seasons and the cosmos and paying attention to the movement of the sun and the moon and the stars. And so this practice, the way I teach it, is in a modern container that makes it way more accessible and applicable to our modern lives. But that number 13 is a tip of the hat to the divine goddess and that 13 month lunar cycle.
I love that. I always wish we changed our calendar to a 13-month year because it would make it so much easier.
Easier, more precise. We could, pay
Yes.
attention to the moon cycles and be more tuned into to
Nature.
the rhythms and nature. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's one of my kind of core guiding beliefs is that the more we just in simple ways, right? The more we align with nature, the
Hmm.
more we uncover and discover our own higher human potential. And the more we cut ourselves off, rubber soled shoes, 70-degree cardboard boxes year round, eating out of sync with the seasons, not
Yeah.
getting the light of the sun and the moon in our eyes and on our skin. Just all this simple, it's not like rocket science. It's just like really simple things, but it's really shocking and surprising how powerful and empowering just cozying up to nature can be.
I agree. Totally
Yeah.
agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know you became a yoga teacher at some point.
I did. Wow, that was like kind of a past life at this point. But
Oh,
yeah, I taught yoga starting in the year 2003 and up through around 2008, I believe. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. And
That's
prior to that, I was a dance teacher. And then in 2008, I discovered Qigong and I just did a 180. I just completely turned my back on yoga.
mm,
I was all in
all
with the
in.
Qigong. And so that was when I started practicing and teaching Qigong. But I like to say that I've been guiding bodies through space for some like 3 decades or something now. So
Oh, I kind of skipped over this, but I want to go back to it.
yeah.
So, like when I draw a tarot card,
Yeah.
I know there's books that go with the tarot cards, and you look up the card and the meaning. I usually go to AI as a source now. Um, I just like AI for some reason. Uh, so with your deck being that specific and created by you, how does somebody get that information, that what
Oh,
the card represents?
oh, it's in that. So this is the deck right here.
Okay.
And so every Oracle deck would come with a guidebook. And so
Okay.
you have the cards, right,
And you wrote the
themselves.
guidebook as well.
I wrote the guidebook and the art
Nice.
was the I can give like 90% of the credit for the artwork to my friend Jenny, who was the artist, and then we just really worked in collaboration, and she let me really guide the process, but it was most of it was her.
Okay.
So these are the cards, and then so you
You hold a
draw.
few of them up, they look beautiful.
Yeah. So here, let's see. Some of my oh, they're a little wonky, but here's lapis,
Oh, wow.
and this is an image of my cousin and her baby Nico.
Nice. Nice. So these
Yeah.
are like photographs then?
So the majority of the deck, I love this one. This one's really
Oh,
powerful.
yeah. Yeah.
Uh, the majority of the imagery came from Adobe stock photos.
Mm-hmm.
We would search on there and just, this was like before AI, right? So
Yeah.
it was all done in what's the program? I see. I'm not the techie
Photoshop?
person. Yeah, Photoshop. That's why I had
Yeah.
to have Jenny help me. But oh, this is I think maybe my favorite image in the whole
Oh,
deck.
very cool.
Yeah. So this was a creative collaboration. But so you
Mm-hmm.
would draw an oracle card and then you go into the guidebook and there's a whole description of the message of the card.
Nice.
And then I self-published 6 or 7 years ago, and then got picked up by publishers last year or 2 years ago. And I had the opportunity to go back and evolve the deck. So I did add a meditation, a ritual meditation to each of the 52 cards, which was fun to do, and a history section because folks are curious about where the practice came from.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a little fluffed out from the original
Okay.
self-published OG version, but that's basically the idea. You could go to AI and ask for, if you drew rabbit and you can read what I wrote about, but then if you felt inspired, you could, or if there's something else that you have a personal relationship with that animal, that might also influence how you interpret, the message personally. Yeah.
Okay. That
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Why 52 cards? Does every deck have 52 cards?
I think at the time, again, remember, like I wasn't like a diehard Oracle deck person when I created it.
Yeah.
And I think originally I thought, well, a deck of cards is 52 cards
Okay.
and, standard playing cards. And
Yeah.
that breaks down into four groups of 13. And that seems auspicious,
Mm-hmm.
being that it's the 13 sacred nights. And so I thought originally that I would create four categories of 13, but then I just frankly fell in love with writing about the animals because they're so accessible in their traits and their characteristics that can be very human-like,
Mm-hmm.
they're like a little archetype or a little slice of I don't know, the whole. And so and very like cartoonish in their they it's like they each hold like a very um, um, particular personality emphasis, that's easy to write about, delightful to meditate on. And so I doubled up on the animals and then did 13 crystals and 13 herbs and
Okay.
26 animals. So
Nice.
that was just my process. Yeah.
I like that. I like animals. I got one at my feet right now. She's digging in the sand.
Oh, good. Nice. I got my puppy over here too. He was
Yeah.
stepping on all my notes earlier.
Perfect. Anything else you want to share about your deck?
Um, I think the thing with the Oracle deck, it's really picked up a lot of momentum.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that people are so sick of the hyper commercialism of the holidays, the shopping, the sugar, and the alcohol. And yet we kind of don't know what to replace it with.
Yeah, that's a very
And
good point.
yeah, and I think, a lot of folks were, had religion weaponized against them as children, and maybe they don't quite want to go back to that, or that doesn't feel quite right. But then, well, intuitively we know this time is special and it is powerful and potent and important, and yet how do we mark it? And so I think the practice of the 13 sacred nights, that's why I fell in love with it, was it just offered this really accessible way to anchor into something more meaningful, to more depth during a time that could otherwise just become about, compulsive shopping and, social obligations that you don't really have your heart in.
Hmm.
So it's catching some momentum, and it's beautiful to watch it, really spread.
I love
So
that.
yeah,
Gosh, it's probably been 20 years or more that I've been just so over the whole consumerism of Christmas.
right. Yeah.
And my wife and I don't buy gifts for Christmas. We don't buy each other gifts. We're just, but I searched for something. I was like, what do you replace it with? What do you make it sacred and exciting and, special without all this ridiculous gift buying, which mostly ends up in the landfills.
Right. Yeah. Sorry, my puppies. Hold on a second.
No worries. We can always take a time out for puppies.
Um, so he is an actual puppy. So
Aw, what kind of dog is he?
he's a Chihuahua mutt, a
Okay,
rescue Chihuahua mutt.
very cool.
So yes, and what's interesting about that is I really took a dive into the history of Christmas. My
Hmm.
publishers asked me to write a history chapter, and I realized, like, oh, I've been doing this practice for some 16, 17 years, but I don't actually know where it came from. I just learned it from my teacher, fell in love with it, and and then wrote a book about it, and here we are. But or how to do it, and so I ended up diving into the history of Christmas, which is actually a very unexpected reveal. And
Mm.
it's not at all what most of us think it is. I think, at least I certainly sort of had this unexamined belief that, all of these Christmas traditions kind of hitched a ride on the Mayflower and organically trickled down through, different cultures in the colonies.
Yeah.
And that's how we ended up with Santa Claus. And wasn't that a saint, back in time, and that
Hmm.
was generous with children, or who knows what. And turns out that actually all of our holidays have kind of gone through a four-layer process of being intentionally, I'm going to use the word rebranded, in order to shape and mold the behavior of the masses. And with Christmas in particular, in the 1800s, there was a very small group of New York elites that got
Okay.
together, and the upper classes and then the Puritans were not happy with the way Christmas was being celebrated. And when I say Christmas, it was not at all what we think of as Christmas today. So it actually looked more like a carnival kind of
Oh,
event. It was rooted in Saturnalia, which was the ancient midwinter festival of Rome. It was a time of complete role reversal, like an upside downness of, like, just society wide letting the steam out of the kettle. And so there was gambling and debauchery and drunkenness and uh, cross dressing and slaves being served by slave owners, and a fool was crowned king, and the children ruled the household. And it was just this, like, time of total upheaval and chaos. And the upper classes in the colonies specifically started pulling away from
hmm.
those traditions and no longer wanting to participate in the role reversal. And then also, of course, the Puritans were just not having it. And so there was this tension that was building and building and building, and it started erupting into violence and this, like, really clashing of the classes. And so this group of upper class elites, like, there were like five or six of them, they got together and they literally dreamt up what we now think of as Christmas. It it
Amazing.
it really was an intentional rebranding in order to domesticate the holiday, keep it within the walls of the parlor, make it about the children. And so instead of an exchange of gifts between the lower classes and the upper classes, it would be an exchange within the walls of the home between the children and the adults. And like, they cherry picked old world traditions because they wanted people, they wanted the masses to feel romantically plugged into their roots. But they, again, they literally like dreamt up this holiday. They said that the house of ale will not be vanquished by the house of God. And so we're going to come up with a new deity and we're going to call him Santa Claus. And they chose,
Wow.
yeah, they chose specific qualities from, again, like the reason you think, oh, it all organically trickled down from the old world is because they did draw inspiration
Yeah.
from traditions from the old world. But
Hmm.
they created this new deity, they created these new traditions that would be calm, subdued, family friendly, domesticated, not parading around out in the streets. And I mean, like Christmas was literally outlawed in Massachusetts from 1659 to 1681. So
Crazy.
that tells you that it wasn't what we think of as Christmas
So it
today.
wasn't the celebration of Jesus's birthday back then?
No, absolutely. And in fact, that was one of the things that that was a whole nother layer. But in the early days of Christianity, Easter was the main holiday because they knew when Christ had been crucified, but nobody actually knows when Christ was born. And even within Christianity, that's a known fact that nobody knows when Christ was born. They just chose that day. That was at the Council of Nicaea. They chose that was in the 300s sometime. They chose that day because it aligned with the Roman god Sol Invictus, who was the unconquerable sun god. So think about the solstice, right?
Hmm.
Is when the light is reborn, the sun is reborn.
Yeah.
And so that's how we have those stories aligning and overlapping.
That's
Yeah.
crazy. I never knew that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That Council of Nicaea, man, they did some pretty wild stuff.
They did some pretty wild stuff. Yeah, they made some big decisions. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to go too deep into that. I could get
Yeah,
off.
we could that's like three podcasts.
Yeah, exactly. I want to stay positive.
I am considering writing a book about the history of each of the five major holidays, the most commercialized holidays. I'm kind of like starting it, but like I said, I almost accidentally wrote the Oracle deck,
Hmm.
and so the thought of like taking on another book project, I'm kind of like, is that really what I want to do? But there's a lot of curiosity, and I've got all the research I've already done. I read like 32 books on the history of our holidays, and
Wow.
yeah, so if you're curious about any holiday in particular, I could tell you its story.
Interesting.
Hmm.
Yeah, not a big holiday fan to be honest with you.
Yeah. Yeah. But what I think is interesting about learning the history, because so many people are really knee-jerk defensive of the holidays and their traditions, right? But if you really dig into the history and you see how they've been manipulated
Hmm.
multiple times over, in order to manipulate us,
Yeah.
then you get a little bit less defensive, a little bit more curious, and a little bit more willing. This is my hope, is that we might all be willing to pause, take a step back, and think about, as opposed to just sleepwalking through this revolving door of shopping, sugar, and alcohol, how do we want to mark these sacred moments? And what do we consider sacred? And
Hmm.
and it doesn't mean you have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. If you have traditions that nourish you, that bring you close to your loved ones, that make you feel good, whatever it is, keep it. But maybe be willing to let go of the things that you're just sort of doing, by
Yeah.
habit, and
Yes.
and they're not really serving you in any way. And so when we understand the history, then we get a little bit less like knee jerk defensive. You
Yeah.
know?
Everyone,
Yeah.
stop buying junk that nobody wants that goes into the landfills. Nobody wants it
Right.
anyway. Just
Yeah.
stop.
Yeah. Good call. I agree. Yeah.
So, all right. So let's move forward now. So you got into yoga and then Qigong, and Qigong became your principal practice. But you mentioned a type of therapy that you integrated with the Qigong, and I'm really
Yeah.
interested in hearing about that.
Yeah, so I studied with an organ. So I had my own healing journey, as many of us in the healing space do,
Yeah.
and tripped into chronic illness 3 months after my daughter was born. And
Mm.
you're not gonna study and dig and you know um, put the time in the way you do when you're up against a wall, And so I
Yeah.
went really deep for over a decade. And TRE was one of the things that really helped me. It stands for Tension and Trauma Releasing Exercises. And
Okay.
that was the organization that I studied with in the Bay Area. And essentially, what they teach is that we all have this innate mechanism in our nervous system that's a tremor response. So if you think of the way that your animal shakes when it's scared or overstimulated, or think of a gazelle getting chased by a lion. And when it finally recognizes that it's not going to be breakfast, lunch, or dinner, it will wander off to the side of the herd, shake and tremble. And then when that process is complete, it will come back to the herd, no PTSD, happy, healthy, grazing gazelle, right? So we are also mammals.
Hmm.
And we have that same mechanism in our nervous systems, but we are socially conditioned to shut it down. So if you started tremoring or trembling and in a public at the coffee shop that you're at or wherever you're at,
They'd probably call
probably
911.
Probably, yeah, exactly. The rest of the herd's not going to be like, "Oh, cool, Jim's having a release," right?
Yeah.
Like they'd probably rush over, ask if you needed them to call an ambulance. What do
Hmm.
you need? Do you have some medication? Like how do we help you make this stop? It's not we're afraid of it. We're afraid of like losing control, or we just don't recognize what it is. So there's actually a surprisingly simple way to turn that on in the body. And then it is an involuntary muscle contraction. So this is voluntary muscle movement. It's involuntary. So there's a way to turn that on. And essentially what I do is we lie down on a yoga mat with my clients. I guide them into that tremor. So it starts typically in the inner thighs. They start to quiver, and then I have tricks and ways of spreading it through the whole body. And then once they're comfortable in that tremor, then I will, weave in the medical qigong meridian work, working with the five elements: wood, fire, earth, metal, water, the organ systems, the clearing foreign energy, all the things that I've studied for since 2008
Okay.
with
So
my
if it's
teaching.
involuntary, how do you voluntarily get it to switch on?
So it's just you're basically holding your body in a series of awkward positions,
Okay.
and then like I said, it typically for most people starts in the inner thighs. They'll just start
Okay.
to tremble. A lot of people um, in more recent years will say, "Oh, this is like what happens in a bar class when the muscle's fatigued and you
Oh,
start
okay.
to tremble in that way."
I thought you
Uh,
meant like a drinking bar. I'm like, what?
no, 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 like an
Like
exercise
a
class. I've
like
never taken a
Pilates bar.
bar.
Okay.
I've never
Yeah.
taken a bar class, but I have a lot of people who say that. Um,
Okay.
when they experience the tremor. And then again, you get to a place where you're just completely relaxed and the tremor takes off on its own and it's just humming away and you're lying there relaxed on a yoga mat and tremoring and allowing. I think of it it's it's like a botted up like a knotted up ball of yarn, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And in our healing processes, I think sometimes when we're intellectually, there you go, you got the right shirt on, just like that.
Just like
Exactly.
that.
Just like that. That's like a bowl of spaghetti, but same,
Yeah.
same, 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 but different.
Yep.
So, but like my daughter was into knitting for a while when she was really little, and
Yeah.
she'd bring me these big balls of yarn that she had been trying to untangle
Mm-hmm.
by like yanking at the end, right? Or yanking at one part of the knot. And then, of course, what happens?
It's tighter. Yeah.
It gets tighter. And that's like the metaphor that I have in my mind of how we sometimes intellectually approach our health challenges. It's like we think we know where the end of the string is. And so we're like yanking on it, like banging our heads against the wall of some modality or, supplement or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
And so what I love about the tremor process is it's in the body, and the body knows how that pattern of tangle went in, and it knows exactly how to move in order to release that deeply held tension from the tissues, right, from the
Okay.
fascia, and to
Yeah.
let it unwind. So it's really it's a process that doesn't have to involve a whole lot of mind. And it's just like not we're not doing choreography. It's not like, oh, I have a shoulder injury, so I'm gonna shake my shoulder. It's not that at all. You just let the body do its thing, and
Mm-hmm.
there can be really miraculous things that fall away, pains that disappear.
Mm.
Um, emotional processes that bubble to the surface and are able to finally fully express and then dissipate, and so it's a pretty profound experience.
Sounds like it. It's completely different than what I imagined when you think about Qigong and then
Yeah.
laying on the mat and having this experience. It's interesting what you're saying. A little over a month ago, I think, I got a really good friend who's amazing at acupuncture, and he also does the most amazing Reiki. And I fell asleep on his table when he was doing acupuncture and Reiki on me, and he said I had a shoulder injury, and that's why I went to see him. And he said as he was doing the Reiki on me, my shoulder literally started shaking. So now I'm thinking like, okay, it was the body unwinding all that, what was going on. That just
See, the
totally
body
makes
knows what
sense.
to do. Your
Yeah,
body knew exactly what to do. That wasn't a process that you were
no,
intellectually guiding. It was
no,
completely spontaneous, right?
yes.
And so
And
that's what we tap into with the neurogenic tremors. Yeah.
yeah, and he seemed totally shocked about it too. But then I was amazed at how good my shoulder felt after that.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, you didn't even need anyone to teach it to you. Your body just your body just knew exactly what to do.
I just need to be poked with needles and have some Reiki going on.
There you go. Yeah, well, sometimes we need a little nudge, right?
Yeah,
Sometimes
yeah.
that's why we help each other. It's like, it's
Hmm.
ultimately, I think all healing is self-healing, but it's also okay to receive support along the way and just a
Yeah.
little nudge here and there from a friend.
Yes, yes. So I'm
Yeah.
thinking, I've taken Tai Chi classes. I thought Qigong was similar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Tai Chi is a form of Qigong, the
Okay.
greater umbrella of Qigong that is a martial art in nature. So Qigong literally means Qi or universal life force energy, and then
Hmm.
Gong is the good work or practice of. So the good work or practice of cultivating universal life force energy. I hope my puppy is not too distracting for
Not at
everyone.
all.
Okay. I'm fine, but like I just realized this is like,
He's gnawing on your arm.
podcast 101, like get your pets out of the house so they don't distract.
It actually might attract more viewers. People love dogs.
Okay. This is Pedro, everyone.
Hi, Pedro. He looks like
Uh,
a Pedro.
yeah, he's named after my favorite cactus, San Pedro Huachuma, grandfather Huachuma.
Very cool.
So, so Qigong is the good practice of cultivating universal life force energy. And then
Okay.
Tai Chi is a martial art that falls under that greater umbrella. So in China, even something like calligraphy could be considered a form of Qigong if it is practiced with the intention of cultivating, spiritual focus and universal life force energy.
Okay.
So yeah,
All
but
right.
but the Qigong practice forms look very similar to Tai Chi, right? It's moving slowly through space and playing with this energy, this suddenly tangible but invisible energy that's within us and all around us, and working with that energy inside the
Yeah.
body and in the field around us.
Okay, cool. So
Yeah.
yeah, I was imagining this movement and therapy. I'm like, how does that all working together?
Okay. Because within Qigong, we have two branches. So there's the personal practices, which is what you're thinking of.
Yep.
And then there's the clinical work, which looks like kind of like acupuncture without the needles or like
Okay.
Reiki, right? So
Okay.
it's ancient Chinese energy medicine before they
Hmm.
started putting needles in the meridians. They were working with their hands, with, um, moving energy with your sword finger, with your hands, with your palm, with your Laogong point, with your mind, directing
Hmm.
energy without
Yeah.
the needles. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. That gives me a much better understanding because I'm like, how do you bring
Yeah.
therapy into the movement? And I was,
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. And also, some of the things that I incorporate are I'll hear the person's story first, what they're working with,
yeah.
and then tune into their energy body and get a read for which of the five elements is wanting a little attention or a little wobbly. Wood, fire, earth, metal, water is the Chinese,
Yeah.
philosophical system there, and the organ correlations, and then there are healing sounds that correspond to each of those organs and elements. And so maybe we'll work with the healing sounds while we're tremoring, or certain words that will say correlate to the metal element. There are
Okay.
certain words that might bring up that theme for that person if we just repeat that word. And so they kind of bring to the surface some of the stuff that's hanging out below the surface.
No, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's power in words and vibration and energy, and it's
Yeah.
incorporating all that. That's magnificent.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like I said, it's a mashup of all the things that moved the needle for me over the years.
Yes, this doesn't sound like something you can do online. Is it
So, it wasn't until, of course, COVID,
COVID?
right? And then for better or for worse, it was like I was forced to get online. I do see clients online, and
Okay.
I think again, like having been guiding bodies through space for 3 decades now, I'm fairly good at giving verbal cues to help people.
Okay.
And I would only do that one-on-one with a client. I would
Yeah.
never feel comfortable teaching a workshop, say online. I do teach workshops in person,
Hmm.
and that's can be that's incredible as well. But I work with individual clients online. I give a big fat discount for anyone who's willing to show up in person in California because I would much prefer to get back to that, period in my
Sure.
life, just more in the flesh, in the room, actual human contact. So I'm trying to encourage
Yeah.
that in my client base, and I do have clients that will come from out of town and out of state and stay here locally and do a series of of 3 or 5 uh, intensive sessions, one after another, 3 or 5 days in a row.
Oh, excellent. What part of
Yeah.
California are you in?
I am in Atascadero on the Central Coast, so I'm right by San Luis Obispo, Morro Bay,
Okay.
Pismo Beach,
Yeah.
um, 2.5 hour, or excuse me, 2 hours north of Santa Barbara,
Hmm.
about 4 hours north of LA, 4 hours
Yeah.
south of the Bay Area, but right on the coast. Yeah.
Hanging out with the elephant seals.
Hanging out with elephant seals. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a nurse by trade and did some travel nursing in California.
Oh,
And my
nice.
wife and I took a trip. We were in about an hour northeast of LA. So we
Okay.
drove up to check out the elephant seal. I'm like, I want to go see these seals. They're just so amazing.
They're pretty wild. Was it during
Yeah.
during their mating season?
Unfortunately, it wasn't,
It
but
wasn't. So they
it
were just
was,
like lumps. They were like logs on the
yes,
on the beach. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, but it's
Still
still
cool.
so cool. They're so big. And
They're
some of them were moving
huge.
around. So yeah, it's pretty
Yeah.
fascinating.
In the early spring, late winter, it's wild because the males are battling for dominance, and
Hmm.
there's like so many crazy these big long belching noises that come out of them, and the
Yeah,
pups, the babies are all squeaking, and it's pretty.
quite a
So you might
show.
have to return
Yeah.
and yeah, take a
I think,
second visit.
and when they're not doing that, my understanding is they're just out swimming in the ocean, right?
Yeah, I think they spend a massive amount of time, yeah,
Yeah,
out
just out
in
there
the
swimming and
ocean.
eating. Pretty
Yeah,
amazing. It
yeah,
was cool in the area we were at because there was a lot of sea lions, and really lived directly across the street from the beach,
yeah.
and down to the right side of our block, which was like 3 houses down, maybe 2 houses down. There was a little beach, and all the sea lions would just hang out there and take over the beach. It's just
They're so cool.
so cool. Yeah, so
Yeah,
fun. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Um, so you're doing this work online now. You prefer to do it in your own space if you can. How long do sessions last?
The session is 2 hours.
Okay, it's pretty lengthy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, and when I do workshops, they're usually about 2 hours as well. Obviously, if I teach a group workshop, there's less individuation as far as the reading of the energy body and the meridian work and everything else. So I would do more of a longer standing Qigong practice where maybe we get into the 5 elements or the inner cauldrons, and then we would all lie down as a group and tap back into those organs and see what's held there that might want to release through the physical tremor, and just kind of guide the process in that way and explore, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So
Are you using the Oracle cards with these people?
usually no, but it's funny. I just went and taught. I did a workshop for Alex Zek out at Confluence event in Texas,
Okay.
and I love that community. If anyone's interested, and just it's the most fabulous community of brilliant, heart open folks who are actually doing the things to create the more beautiful world that we all know is possible. Just incredible people. So that's called Confluence event, and Alex Zek is kind of the ringleader there. But it was funny because I taught a workshop there, and I drew an oracle card just to set the tone for the class. And that community is all very familiar with the oracle deck and the practice.
Yeah.
And I drew an oracle card, and the card that I drew was opal. And Opal just so happens to have a quote at the very top of the page that is a quote by Eileen McCusick, who is another one of the organizers of that event. So she's like a really
Wow.
staple pillar foundation of that community. And the one card that I draw out of 52 is the card that has her quote right at the top of the page. And I just cracked up. So that's a little bit of the like mischievous magic that you were speaking to, earlier about how it's just
Yes.
so synchronistic the way they line up with your life. The little, that's like a wink from God, right? Like I'm
Hmm.
messing with you, you know. So yeah,
Very
that just
cool.
happened last month.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to share with our audience today?
Oh man. Um, I think again, just to come back to this idea of how important ritual is.
Hmm.
And I think for two reasons. One, because our holidays are rituals, right?
Yeah,
They're rituals
absolutely.
that we're all enacting en masse together,
Yeah.
and they're important for two reasons. One, if you believe that our human consciousness, our thoughts and our mind are divinely co-creative, which I do believe that we are co-creating this physical playing field with each other and with the mystery.
Hmm.
Um, you know, just the nature of us all pausing together and sort of enacting, doing the same things, engaging in the same behaviors, and sort of thinking along the same lines, that is incredibly powerful, just kind of unthinkably powerful.
Yep.
And then along with that, this is how we teach our children what's most important. So, hey, kids, everybody's out of school's off. Parents even have the day off of work.
Hmm.
Everybody that you know is doing the same thing. This must be really important. This is sacred. This is something that we hold most dear as a society. So pay attention, right? And what are we teaching our kids? Shopping, sugar, and alcohol, materialism, consumerism, right? This is what we're
Yeah.
passing on to the younger generations as most important about being human within this society. So, so again, this is kind of the conversation that I'm just trying to bring up is, hey, this is important. Can we pause and rethink, reimagine individually and also collectively how we want to celebrate our sacred moments? Yeah,
I honestly love that.
yeah,
Kudos to you. Yeah. Before we end, how does someone get a hold of you if they want to
yeah.
get your
So
oracle cards or if they want to do the Qigong therapy work?
yeah, so everything's on my website, which is just my name, larajday.com. Don't sneak a U in there, even when I spell it. Sometimes
Got it.
Lara. Yeah, people still sneak the U in. So larajday.com. I'm most active on Instagram as far as social media goes.
Okay.
Lara J Day is also my handle there. And then the Oracle deck is available. My publishers it's available on their site beyondword.com, but it's also on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Simon and Schuster, booksamillion.org, or .com. Anyway, bookshop.org. It's in lots of places. There's links on my website. If you just want to go to my website, that might be the easiest place to find
Yeah.
all the things. Yeah.
Sounds good. Sounds
Yeah.
good. All right. Thank you so much for joining me today. I love this conversation. I like the work that you're doing and keep doing it.
Yeah. Thank you.